Welcome to the White Collar Fitness Radio, the ultimate podcast for professionals striving to achieve optimal performance in today's fast-paced age. I'm your host, Bruno Dalladoni, and I'm here to help you achieve optimal performance even if you're short on time. Hello everybody, welcome to today's episode where we're discussing a bit of the news. Today we're discussing tracking your blood glucose, your blood sugars at home. So there is a piece on the BBC and the headline is Doctors Question Science Behind Blood Sugar Diet Trend. The main company doing this at home or for, I suppose, at home consumption is Zoe. And I'm sure you've seen the adverts. They've got all sorts of celebrities doing it. Davina McCall's on the trend, or at least marketing it. And what they have is a two-part thing going on. First part is you get all the testing done. They test your gut health. They send you a blood sugar sensor, so the stuff you put in your arm, and it stays there for 2 weeks, I believe. I might be wrong, don't quote me, but I believe it's 2 weeks. And then they test your blood fats. Amazing. And then there's never a bait without a switch. And the switch comes in the form of a membership that then you get your Zoe scores and tools and supposedly expert nutritionists. All very cool, all very 21st century. Amazing. Now the program starts, as far as I know, at around £300, give or take, which is rather hefty, if you ask me. But, okay, we need to differentiate a couple of things. The first thing is our continuous glucose monitor, so the little patch thing on the arm, any good? And always and forever, the answer is it depends. It depends who you are, what you're using it for. So if you're someone that has diabetes, yeah, probably quite handy, because primarily whenever constant glucose monitoring takes place in terms of studies, the research is primarily done on people that need it, aka diabetics. So if you don't need it, as in you're just going by your day and you want to know whether you're going to be healthier by cutting out broccoli out of your diet, then they're not, like, there's no funding for that, because why would there be? That's dumb. The funding is primarily coming from drugs companies so that they can create better drugs for diabetics and make money themselves. So makes sense, right? Incentive structures and all that. But also probably quite important for people that have diabetes, because obviously if your blood sugars stay consistently high for a prolonged period of time, so they're unmanaged and they're chronically high for a prolonged period of time, it can lead to all sorts of adverse effects, from organ damage through to amputations and all sorts of unpleasant and nasty things that we don't really want to think about. I would suggest that a continuous glucose monitor, if you have diabetes, probably worth talking to your doctor about. But this is not why we're here today. We're here to talk about people that don't have diabetes, in fact, and are using these things to figure out whether they can be a bit healthier, or maybe for some weight loss or whatever. The first question that always comes to mind for me is, what is the point? What's the point in doing that? And there might be a point. So I'm going to try to play devil's advocate as best as I can. I don't know that I'm going to do a good job of it, but I'll try. I think the first thing for us to think about is, if you're trying to do this for weight loss, the same principles apply, which is adherence. So are you going to stick with it? And calorie deficit, energy balance. Are you eating in a calorie deficit? If you're not, then start there. And is this thing going to tell you to cut out foods that you really enjoy and bring you some manner of, I don't want to say joy again, but like some people need a bit of chocolate in their diet to get them through the day. That's fine. But if this thing is then going to tell you that you shouldn't have any chocolate at all ever because it spikes your blood sugars, how likely are you to stick to that? And it is but human nature that once the first domino falls, everything else falls with it. If psychologically you go, if in your mind you go, yeah, but I shouldn't have chocolate and I've had some chocolate, you're then not going to go, okay, but I'll stick with the rest of it. What tends to happen, and listen, maybe you do and more power to you, but what tends to happen is you go, I shouldn't have had that chocolate and I've had some chocolate. Well, I've already blown it, so I'm going to have a pizza as well. We all know that happens. I think if the thing is for weight loss, then how likely is it to help promote, 1, better relationship with food, 2, adherence, 3, a calorie deficit. Okay, that's that on the weight loss front. Some food for thought as always. The next bit is if you're looking for health, right? If the idea is that you want to be healthy, then I would suggest do the big stuff first. A bit of a random anecdote, but I had a client ask me, I don't know, shout out Dan. My client Dan asked me, I don't know, maybe a month ago about pre-workouts. What do I think? Do I recommend one? And again, it depends. After fleshing it out a little bit, why he was asking the question in the first place, my answer at the end was, I don't think you need it. And the reason for that is that if you're ticking all the boxes all the time and you're like on point, then yeah, some pre-workout might bring you some marginal gains because you might have an extra 5 to 10% now and again during your workouts. Maybe. And maybe it's handy if you're really tired and you really don't want to be there. But you have to balance those things out with recovery is more important than a bit of caffeine if you're going to work out. So is that going to impair your recovery? Is it going to affect other areas that are more important, that you're going to get more bang for your buck? This is, I suppose, the reason I'm bringing this up is to highlight that this applies here as well. And it's, are you doing the big stuff first? We are all of us, myself included, we're all suckers for a shiny thing. And if that shiny object is put in front of us, we tend to almost disregard the stuff that's working or the stuff that we know will work for the next shiny thing. We're all guilty of it. We all do it. And that's why salespeople tend to actually make half decent money. Don't be suckered in to the shiny new object because, like I say, playing devil's advocate, maybe it is really good. But for as good as it is, it's still not big. It's not like low-hanging fruit big. As in, are you having enough vegetables in your diet every day? Are you having enough protein every day? Are you having enough water every day? Are you having enough fiber every day? Are you limiting your caffeine intake to different, so you're not having it in the afternoon? All these things are much bigger bangs for your buck than, oh, I had an avocado and it spiked my blood sugars. Oh no. Okay. So, now, that's all the stuff talking about people using it directly and what they're using it for and just some food for thoughts. But the other thing we need to think about is what Zoe does is they use the data they collect as part of a broader trend, potentially even a bit of a study. they talk a lot about microbiome, and they're studying the microbiome and how the foods you choose impact your own microbiome, so on and so forth. And they're trying to aggregate this to a bigger, let's say, data pool that they can then analyze and pull out trends of foods that affect the microbiome positively or negatively. This is, as far as I understand, what they're trying to do. I might be wrong, and if I am, then ignore me. But as far as I understand, that's what they're trying to do. Now, there are issues with that. And the first thing for us to think about is that we all have our own biases. And that in and of itself is fine. But if you're giving the data, the raw data, straight to the consumer, if the consumer hasn't been trained in how to look at that data and disregards their own bias, that could lead to issues. Example. And this is, in fact, in the BBC article, so I'll read directly from it. Dr. Guess is concerned she's seeing patients who use Zoe's product cutting out foods she believes are good for their health because they seem to spike their blood sugar. That, in and of itself, can lead to health problems and is not recommended by the company. She adds, people who avoid carbohydrates will get temporarily, quote, an exaggerated glucose response, end quote, the next time they eat them, which she says is perfectly normal. But that could potentially lead them to think they are unable to tolerate carbs at all. In a real world scenario, yes, the company says that, great, they have to cover their legal behinds. But they're effectively doing is as a nutritionist, I know, right, that if you haven't had carbs for breakfast or a couple of meals, you've avoided having carbohydrates for a while. Next time you eat them, you're going to get a big spike on your blood sugars. Amazing. That's normal. That happens. Your blood deals with it. Your body deals with it. And you go on your merry way and you're none the wiser. But what if you are the wiser? What if you see that data on your phone and you have already had in your mind, because for years you've been bombarded with keto adverts, that carbohydrates are in fact the devil. It's the monster under your bed. And if you have carbohydrates, you'll die a painfully slow death. Now you're seeing that graph tell you that you had one too many raspberries and your blood sugar spiked. And voila, we've got a perfect recipe for disaster, because you're imparting your own biases into raw data without any real background knowledge to the subject. So that is a bit of an issue. And like I say, I understand that the company says that they don't recommend it or whatever, but we all know that they're just hyperventilating about stuff that they know happens. But they do have to publicly say things because they have to cover their ass. So, next. Zoe is also, like I say, collecting data on your food choices, on your blood glucose, your gut microbiome, and so on. And the problem is, because people are not in a study setting, okay, you can't really tell what is correlation and what is a causation. As in, you can't tell what's coincidence and what isn't. So they're aggregating, like I say, as far as I understand, they're trying to create some sort of large data pool from all the people using it. And that's fine. But science and studies are based on confounding variables. How many variables can you control so that when you then do your intervention, you can then have real data whether the intervention is working or not? This becomes very difficult because you've got people just running their day-to-day lives and making food choices. And there's another thing too, right? Which is the gut science, let's call it, is very new as study fields go. Scientists, by and large, don't really know what any of it means anyway, to start off with. I've always said it. Anybody that tells you with 100% certainty something, you should probably be a bit aware of them, unless they can show you where they're getting their data from, which fine. But the stronger the claim, the stronger body of evidence you want to be shown. And because it's a relatively new field of study, there isn't really real strong evidence for much of muchness, really. Now, sure, there's evidence building for things. There's evidence building for the brain-gut axis. Cool. But I wouldn't feel particularly comfortable sitting here and telling you that's what it does, because they're still studying it. They're still getting to grips with the stuff. Like I said, we don't really know what any of it means anyway. And then there's also the fact that whenever you get people to hyper-focus on things that they probably didn't need to hyper-focus on in the first place, that can lead to potentially eating disorders where it comes to this stuff. We know that by and large, not everyone obviously, but by and large, people that have eating disorders like to focus on numbers because it gives them a sense of control. If someone's got that propensity, or that, they lean that way, but they haven't fully developed a bit of an eating disorder, now they're tracking and they can see their graphs and they can see that if they have X food, Y food, it spikes their blood glucose, this and that. Well, you're giving them numbers to work with. You're giving them a reason to be hyper focusing on things that they didn't really need to hyper focus on. So I'm not saying that everyone, I'm not even saying that most people will end up with eating disorders, but as far as I'm concerned, even if one person ends up with an eating disorder because they didn't need to, it's one too many. There you go, guys. As always, food for thought for you. If you enjoyed the episode, let me know. If you have comments, again, let me know. And like, rate, share, subscribe, all of these fun things. Give us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. And I'll catch you guys next time.